Good morning, everyone. We are the Epilepsy12 Youth Advocates, formed to support the Epilepsy12 National Audit Programme, bringing our voices, experiences, hopes and wishes to life through youth-led projects and advocacy. This included designing a clinic self-assessment tool, the clinic chat checklist, visiting clinics to support discussions around future plans, and looking to find out what makes the gold standard in supporting patients' worries and anxieties, to supporting campaigns and social media, and sharing our learnings at the RCPCH conference. So my name is Hannah, and joining me are my fellow youth advocates.
Hi, I'm Saskia.
Hi, I'm Grace.
Hi, I'm Demi. So in previous E12 audit rounds, the Youth Advocate successfully published mental health to be pushed. We believe a good epilepsy service must also support children and young people with co-occurring mental health conditions. Poor mental health can worsen epilepsy, triggering seizures or prolonging them, so it was vital to include mental health in the audit.
So today we're diving deeper into this topic. As you can see on the screen, recent E12 audit findings show encouraging progress. 38.2% of children aged 5+ had documented mental health assessments in their first year of care, which is up from 22.4% in cohort 5. 76.6% of those with identified mental health needs received support, which is up from 61.5%. This is a positive step, but more work is needed to ensure that all the children and young people are screened and supported, especially given the high prevalence of mental health conditions among those with long-term health conditions.
So, for children and young people who are just finding out they have epilepsy, it can be overwhelming. They might feel scared, confused, or even angry, and that can hurt their mental health, as you suddenly have all these new changes to consider, like remembering to take your meds, thinking about sleep, avoiding certain triggers, and all the new changes that come with living with epilepsy. If you already have a mental health issue, epilepsy can make things feel heavier. Some medications can affect your mood, and sometimes people don't understand what you're going through, which can feel isolating. Mental health and epilepsy are closely linked. I don't get why it's not spoken about more, and they can impact each other in big ways. For people who already have an ongoing mental health issue, epilepsy can add extra challenges. Some anti-epilepsy medication may affect mood, and living with a long-term condition can increase the risk of depression or mental health issues. Epilepsy and mental health are connected. Talking about both together and getting the support for both will make life so much easier for children and young people. Support is essential. It will allow children and young people to be open about it and not bottle things up. Once the support has been given, it helps children and young people learn how to cope and feel less alone. Examples of children and young people could include someone who might feel anxious may avoid going out in case they have a seizure, which can lead to loneliness and worsen their mental health and well-being. A young person with depression may struggle to take medication regularly, which could increase their risk of having a seizure. A young person might feel embarrassed at school if others see a seizure, which can knock their confidence and increase social anxiety. And lastly, a young person could be struggling or have a lack of energy, motivation, or feeling exhausted. It can make the young person feel like having epilepsy is disrupting their life.
So there's still such a stigma about mental health, and for some children and young people, it can be a scary, worrying, upsetting, culturally uncomfortable topic to speak about, but it doesn't have to be this way. In order to start having conversations about mental health with children and young people, we believe that it should start from the very beginning of when a young person is diagnosed with epilepsy. From their very first appointment, as we know that not every child and young person, like me or like us up here, are going to open up straight away in your services or your clinics, and consistency is key. So by checking in and seeing how the children or young people are doing in your service in each of their appointments, they'll be able to let you in each time a bit more and more. and they'll be able to tell you how they're doing or how they're feeling. And it's not just about their epilepsy, but more about them as a person. To provide them with the adequate support, referrals, or signposting that will help support them with both their epilepsy and mental health, especially when these conversations can identify medications impacting mood or behaviour, or help with early intervention, which keep young people taking their medications as their worries have been expressed and addressed. They've been given encouragement or answers when they need it. Some useful tips that may be helpful to try for your young people. If they're finding it hard to communicate or open up about their well-being, you can try to do check-ins with parent, carers, guardians, or their siblings, as sometimes what is one of their biggest worries or concerns is how their diagnosis impacts or makes their families feel. And if all are involved in the conversation, it can make it a lot easier. So we will share some resources that our PCH and US network and partners have created with children and young people on engagement that can support building up these relationships with those that you care for in a later section. But one key thing to mention when engaging with children and young people is when discussing mental health is to consider the language that you use, such as using well-being, as opposed to mental health, which can feel more positive, and it just leaves the conversation more open for everyone to be involved and discuss about.
So as Grace and Demi have mentioned, when we think of epilepsy, most people only think about the seizures. But in reality, mental health plays a huge role in a young person's epilepsy diagnosis, and there's two main reasons why. So the first reason relates to the concept of stigma, where epilepsy is still misunderstood. Many children and young people face stereotypes, often seen as fragile, incapable, or treated like they can't do the same activities as everyone else. This can make them feel embarrassed, isolated, or the need to prove themselves, which can impact their confidence and well-being and their overall mental health. The second reason relates back to medication. So anti-seizure medications have such an important and life-changing role in epilepsy management, but can still come with side effects that can impact mood, sleep, and behavior. So imagine being a teenager, already dealing with school, friends, and family, but then on top of that, feeling tired or foggy from your medication. But also on top of that, having to deal with tablets and medication every single day, which can feel like a constant reminder that you're different from your peers, particularly with the stigma around young people with long-term conditions taking medication for a long period of time. It can be a lot to handle as a young person. The mixture of stigma, medication, and sort of the uncertainty that comes with epilepsy in terms of the next possible seizure can really spike a young person's anxiety. And even socially, epilepsy can limit a young person's independence or impact how they're treated by friends and family. Hence, when we talk about good epilepsy care, it's not just about controlling seizures, it's about supporting the young person as a whole.
With mental health being such a big aspect of young people's lives, there are a few other important things to keep in mind when bringing it up with your patients. Firstly, don't expect them to open up immediately. For someone struggling with their mental health, talking about it to someone straight away may not be possible. As an adult working with children and young people, you cannot make yourself the adult that the young person will turn to for support. First and foremost, children and young people will choose who they want to turn to for themselves. However, you can provide an environment and a presence that helps build trust and support with the young person to open up about their mental health. Another thing to consider is the phrasing of your discussion. Like Demi said, the term mental health can be loaded with embarrassment or other feelings about the situation. So make sure to comfort every person so they know that the appointment is a safe space to talk. They may also not take you up on the first offer to talk, but you should make the offer again. It may take more than one invitation before they fully open up to you, but reminding them that you are there if they need you is a great way to start to build trust. Lifestyle can also be a major factor to consider, as the same person may be feeling more anxious before a big exam, like GCSEs or A-levels, than they do afterwards. So it's vital to ask them why they think they feel this way as well. This also benefits you as the clinician, as you may be able to treat it in a way that doesn't require yet another medication for the young person to take. Lastly, if you don't know where to start as you would any other conversation. Simply asking a heartfelt, "How are you?" or saying, I've noticed you've been a bit down or upset or angry today. Do you want to talk?" Regularly checking in means that when something is up, they know that there is a space for them to talk.
We want to ensure that more children and young people diagnosed with epilepsy are being screened for mental health and supporting children and young people to talk about their mental health and well-being. We can only do this by learning, continuous support and encouragement. You can do this from youth clubs, classrooms or clinics. Here are some helpful activities or ideas to support you in building positive mental health for children and young people.
So the RCPCH and us communication cards. So the RCPCH and us have devised a set of cards to help facilitate children and young people's voice in their care and your services. The easy way to use the card set has conversation starters, topics for discussion, communication preferences cards, and feeling cards. And then we have the Young Minds Chatterbox chats. Having a game, puzzle, activity to focus on can help a child or young person feel more comfortable about something for the first time as it moves the focus into the activity. This chatterbox focuses on mood and sharing of ideas on how to boost well-being. And then the community partners / resource / support. So this is having an updated list of community support and resources specifically for children and young people. This can support with referrals and signposting so that the children and young people you come into contact with have additional access to support and resources in the community from sports clubs, youth clubs, and more.
So thank you so much for listening to us today. Improving mental health for children and young people requires collaboration between professionals and young people with lived experiences. To empower children and young people to shape their future, we must listen, learn, and support one another. Today, we're united in driving quality improvement in paediatric epilepsy care across England and Wales. By amplifying children and young people's voices and working together, we can deliver more, better, and responsive care. So before we close, can you all just visit menti.com and scan the QR code on the screen and just enter the code 74378296. And we've got 2 questions for you. So the first question being, what mental health resources could we create that would help you improve your epilepsy service? So someone's mentioned a pragmatic screening tool. I think that's a really good idea. And something for parents, I think I agree with that, particularly with parents having huge exposure to their children and knowing sort of what they experience on a day-to-day basis. Okay. Support apps is really good as well, particularly with technology being really common. CAM's back again as well. I think that's a really good sort of idea. I agree with the idea of like psychologists as well, so the multidisciplinary sort of approach and screening tools. You have really good suggestions here, so sort of talking about GCSEs, A-levels, etc., because I think that can really impact a child's and young person's sort of mental health. And I think involving charities is a really, really good idea too. Booklets, I think that's really good. We're just sort of diversifying resources, so apps, booklets, online resources, and apps as well. And using youth language, I think that's really good. I think a lot of children and young people don't tend to understand or fully take in what's being said by healthcare professionals. I think it seems really intimidating. So using youth-friendly language is a really good approach. And support from schools. I think we were discussing sort of the integration between like healthcare services, schools, charities, as well, particularly with schools having that exposure to children, young people on a regular basis.
Every child has to go. Every child has to go to school, so integrating the two would provide a major benefit to everyone.
And just being open, I do agree. I think just having that sort of open environment, safe environment for the child or young person to feel like sort of safe to discuss any matters. I think that's really good, because I think a lot of experiences here is the idea that sometimes there's an intimidation experienced by a young person when they go to the doctor. It's like that's the doctor almost, but almost creating a sort of safe environment for a young person is really, really important. Thank you so much for these suggestions. So the second question is, what insights from children and young people are missing in current epilepsy care? Yep, schools. As obviously Glassy said, there's obviously schools are compulsory for children and young people. So having that sort of insight from a school perspective and teachers is really, really important. I think school trips is really important as well. I think we all mentioned like sort of an underlying theme of feeling quite sort of scared in school environments and feeling different from peers. So I think school trips and how children and young people with epilepsy can make the most out of them whilst feeling safe is really important. More classroom awareness as well, I do agree with that. I think we've all discussed as well in our meetings how because of the stigma, it means that obviously peers don't understand much about epilepsy, so children can feel quite belittled or embarrassed of their epilepsy because their peers don't know much about it. And yeah, more examples about lived experiences. I think we do hear a lot about adult lived experiences, but I think children lived experiences, how they've dealt with that, and that, you know, it's okay to have epilepsy and still go to school is really important. And it can motivate children and young people to speak up more about it. Yeah, regular feedback is really important as well, like the consistency aspect of it as well. And transition, yeah. We did have last conference last year, we actually spoke about transition, but beyond sort of child to adult services, we actually spoke about transition throughout like a young person's like sort of life experiences. So I think that's a really good one. I think barriers for concordance is really, really good as well. And also barriers to children and young people sort of complying with their medication beyond just them forgetting about it. I think just the like sort of mental health aspect of it as well can really play a huge role. And seizure monitors, I think that's really good as well. I think sometimes my parents personally, they still remind me at the age of 20 to take my medication, but having different ways to remember to take my medication is probably a good idea. And yeah, I think talking to friends is really good. Obviously, in schools, we all have exposure to friends quite frequently, but sometimes it's how to introduce the new epilepsy diagnosis to friends and knowing how they will take it on board. Sometimes you can't expect it as a young person, so how to sort of approach these conversations and sort of explain to them that you might require some support in case of an emergency. But that can be quite nerve-wracking. Really good suggestions here. Thank you so much. So I'm going to pass on to Zasky, who will announce this year's recipient of the Epilepsy12 Youth Legacy Award.
Okay, so the Epilepsy12 Youth Legacy Award is an annual award that celebrates individuals, groups, or services or organizations that amplify children and young people's voices in Epilepsy 12's audit. It recognizes those who have positively impacted young lives by learning from their experiences. The award aims to celebrate children and youth voice initiatives, highlight the role of advocacy in epilepsy care, recognize unsung heroes in young people's journeys, promote children and young people's involvement in shaping epilepsy services, And finally, emphasising the value of learning from lived experiences.
So this year we received several inspiring applications that were just so amazing, showcasing how teams and individuals are amplifying children and young people's voices in epilepsy care. And some of the highlights were workshops on mental health and well-being for young people and their families, creation of youth voice networks to share experiences and advocate for change, as well as young people who were fundraising over £1,000 for nighttime epilepsy monitors.
So after careful consideration, this year award goes to Young Epilepsy Acceptance and Commitment Therapy for young people with epilepsy. So a little bit about our recipient. So the Youth Voice Network at Young Epilepsy is a group of 13 to 25-year-olds with epilepsy from across the UK, has played a vital role in shaping young epilepsies, working through policies and campaigning and products and services, guided by their dedication to youth engagement and participation team. They've contributed to a wide range of initiatives over the past year. This award specifically recognises their co-development of a tailored acceptance and commitment therapy intervention specifically for young people with epilepsy in partnership with the South Paediatric Neurosciences Operational Delivery Network. Young people lead every stage of the project from design to evaluation, ensuring the therapy reflects the real needs and experiences of young people. Congratulations to the Young Epilepsy and the Youth Voice Network for their outstanding contribution to youth-led epilepsy care. So we would like to invite Catherine Hodder, Young Epilepsy's Head of Voice, Policy and Influence, to accept this award.
So congratulations and thank you for listening. And if you'd like to stay up to date with any of our work, please visit the link on the screen. And on behalf of the Epilepsy12 Youth Advocates, we thank you again.
Thank you so much. Are you guys able just to hang out at the front, because I'm absolutely certain people will want to ask some questions. I just want to say how important your contribution is to this meeting, but also to the care of young people with epilepsy. If we don't hear your voice, how on earth are we ever expected to understand what your needs are and how best to address them? So thank you so much for being so honest. I think it was Demi referred to stigma around epilepsy. I've been working in epilepsy care for more years than I'd like to mention. And I feel so sad that in 2025, stigma remains an issue around epilepsy and mental health concerns related to epilepsy. And I think that's a very important thing for us to take note of. I know that from speaking to the young people in my clinic, but you've come to this meeting and been very open about that. And I think we should take stock and think about how we work together to break down those barriers. So thank you very much for all your contributions today. So, questions in the room? Or comments? Richard will comment. Will you?
Is this one of those? Well, it's more of a comment than a question type moment. So, thank you so much for that. As influential as ever. At the beginning, you presented the data about the proportion of clinics that have been asking about mental health, and I think that you showed that in the sixth round of Epilepsy12, it was at 38%, and I remember a time when it was 9%. And I think I'd like to put the credit for that with you guys, because I think you've driven that forward, and you've been telling us over the last 8 years about the importance of mental health, and that's really driven so much of what people have been doing in this area. How do you feel about that figure, 38%, and what do you see happening in the years to come?
So I'd definitely say we're really sort of like relieved to see that the numbers have gone up. But I think obviously now that we're here today, I think we definitely do see that it could be better, and it could be increased to more. Yeah.
To 100%. It is what it should be increased to, shouldn't it? Thanks, Richard. You roving, Nikki?
Yes, yeah.
Hi. Hi, my name is Dr. Suhail Habib. I'm a consultant pediatrician up north from Doncaster area. Thank you very much for doing incredible work. My question is about, I did some work with the Epilepsy Youth Worker in the past, and I asked this question as well. As a pediatrician, when we have young people, particularly adolescents, diagnosed with epilepsy, we encourage them and give the information from our side to join you. But do you try to contact them from your side to sort of work with you? Is there any possibility to do that?
So we, as the young people, don't reach out, but the young people team do. And they get in contact. So if you email in or if you do, there's now a form with a link. But if you do that, then they'll get back to the young people like pretty quickly.
We're open to working with.
Yeah.
Tony, maybe you could explain to people who are here and online how your contact system would work just for this sort of issue.
Yeah, I can share contact details, but we're always open to working with different partners in different organizations and clinics. We are a small team, but we know that we can't do it alone. So especially in the young people, we're always keen to look for more young people to get involved in creating the service that they want to see, and more importantly, working with adults, working with professionals like yourself to look at how we can improve your services. So yeah, we'll be in contact and yeah, see where we can go from there. Yeah.
So fill out the application form, and that's on the RCPCH website, is it?
Yeah, it's not really an application form. An email is fine.
An email.
We don't need
Okay.
to be that.
An email.
Yeah.
So email the team and someone will get back to you. That's great. Thank you. So I think we've got a question online. So just I have to say to you, it's very sophisticated, the conference app. So if you want to ask a question, can you do that in the question and answers button rather than any other function, which I believe there's lots of functions. Thank you.
Yes, I can read some from online. So someone asked, how do young people around ages 13 to 18 feel about attending a children's department when they're infants? When they are infants also present, would a teenage zone be better? If that's
So I'm 17 and I've only just transitioned out of children's care. So it can feel so the children departments and children groups that are currently set up, mixed with infants as well, can feel less targeted towards adolescents and more towards the younger children. So I personally think having something for that age range mentioned, 13 to 18, would be more beneficial. As, for example, a 5-year-old won't need to, in terms of mental health, won't need to deal with exam stress or stresses from academics, whereas a 16-year-old, a 17-year-old who are filling out their UCAS applications for uni, they have a lot more on their plate. So those kind of clinics can more effectively target people of a similar age group. So I think if there are the provisions to do so, a teenage zone would be beneficial for everyone.
Thank you, Saskia. And I think the rest of you are nodding in agreement as well. Thank you.
Yes, I had more, lots of comments online saying how great the session and presentation was as well. I think people are interested in seeing those suggestions that came up from the mentee, so I think we should be able to share those afterwards as well. And then there was another question just about getting feedback from young people and parents from the services? And do you have any suggestions on how each clinical teams can get that feedback, especially from young people and not just the parents, for example?
We've had quite we've had a lot of conversations about that question basically quite recently, with some people saying social media or online forms being really useful. Some people saying QR codes are really helpful, but then when we've spoken to some other young people, they've said QR codes aren't as easy to use in clinic settings because they're worried about what people might think, like why are they wanting to know more. So I think it's kind of, if you could have it on a tailored approach, like surveys are great, but they're not always accessible. So if your young person has different requirements or different needs, then they're not really catered to. So you'd have to get a parent carer to also help with the answers. Sorry. So maybe just like having a conversation or like a few tick boxes or even emoji cards to be like, how have you thought of this? Because it just kind of caters more towards everyone. But it obviously depends on what you can do as a service, and you're already like under a lot of pressure. So if you reach out to other people, I'm sure a pack can be put together.
So it sounds like one size wouldn't fit all, but a combination of these things to enable as much feedback from as wide a group of young people as possible.
Definitely.
So that's something for us to think about. Thank you. Any other questions online, Nikki?
I think that kind of covered another one that came in about engaging with young people that are maybe not as willing to engage, but I think kind of similar things of what you said. But if there's anything you wanted to add specifically with the mental health bits as well.
Well, like Demi said, emoji cards are helpful for mental health because for all age groups, really, seeing a photo, a picture, like a depiction of somebody feeling the same way as you do can help a lot more than trying to put it into words, because we're not really given the language to talk about mental health, whereas we can recognize the majority of people would be able to pick a card that best describes how they're feeling based on how it's depicted. Because in schools, for example, no one really gives you the language to say, I'm feeling this particular way. And it's more generic. Like, you can say you're feeling anxious, but most people don't actually know what anxiety is, or if it's just nerves or stress. It's hard to pinpoint, and sometimes that can hinder the actual treatment process because of the difficulty in explaining it. So yeah, the emoji cards work well.
Yeah, and there was also conversations about talking things out doesn't always work well. But if you write down your questions before an appointment and you give it over to the doctor, or you have a pouch or a passport that's like something you can write on and it's reusable. So like a laminated piece, like card, this is what I want to talk about today. That's also been in some of the epilepsy groups that we've talked to.
Thank you. Anything else, Nikki, online?
Maybe one more line, we can go back to the room. Just building on from that, do you have any advice for services to engage and work with those young people with maybe extra neurodiverse needs or learning disabilities?
We've got some great resources. We were also, like, some of our youth advocates done the Epilepsy Innovation Lab, which was kind of spoken about last year. They had their section after us. And we helped with resources on that. We've got our own resources, but some of the young people in our group are neurodiverse, so they come up with their own kind of things to put in as well. But it is a lot of the time it's tailored, personalized care that kind of helps build it like a person-to-person case. I think.
Stuff needs to be age and stage
Stage
appropriate.
appropriate.
Yeah, that's Demi's favourite phrase.
Yeah.
One thing won't fit every 16-year-old, and one thing won't fit every 9-year-old. It depends on where they are in their stage. So, for example, when I was 12 and I was first diagnosed, I really liked the fact that my doctor knew that I knew to give me the full scientific information, because that's what I found easier to understand, and because then I could research it and get the right stuff. Whereas some of my other friends, they liked it. They found it easier to understand when it was put into a contextual situation. So, for example, so you have epilepsy, this is what it does, and this is how it will affect you in daily life. This is how it might affect you, and this is what your epilepsy care will look like. So it really depends on the individual. So yeah, personalised care is a big thing for everyone, especially people with neurodiverse needs.
Thank you. Any questions in the room?
Thank you very much, and thank you so much for your ongoing efforts in support of, well, Epilepsy, but driving your voice through everything that we do. I'm just wondering, you're a big deal. You're a big deal and a big draw as a group, I think. Would you be interested in, I'm not trying to spend Epilepsy12 money, but a platform for a whole day? I'm wondering, you've got all your resources and tools, and you look at the amount of feedback you get across Menti, but if we could, would you be interested in having a whole day? Let's get back to trying to get people there in person. If we could have a whole day with you and design a whole day and see what we could get out of that as aligned to the work of Epilepsy12 from your point of view.
We would definitely be up for
Yeah.
that.
I think that's a yes.
All right. Good stuff. Thank you.
Colin, just hold on because you are quiet.
Thanks as always for making us think and for challenging us. So Colin Dunkley, paediatrician from Sherwood Forest. Do you think it's easy? I'm trying to get you to have a long view. We're partly in this room and we're partly online. We're in our own social bubble and we're in social media. Do you think it's getting easier to have your voice heard if you have epilepsy? Do you think things are getting easier, or do you think things are getting trickier, or mixture? What's your perspective on that?
So actually, when I was first diagnosed, I didn't know anyone with epilepsy, didn't know who to reach out to, anything like that at all. After joining the Epilepsy12, I obviously met so many different people, and I actually didn't know that conferences like this were a thing, where youth voice can be heard. So I would say that yes, personally for me, youth voice I feel like I'm listened to a lot more, particularly with mental health being stigmatized or seeing different lights across different, cultures or backgrounds. So I would say that yes, I feel like I've heard a lot more, but I'm also aware that it'd be really nice for it to be more common amongst the country, because there's definitely people out there who are potentially struggling and maybe like me didn't know that this Epilepsy12 was a thing, or other organisations that are similar.
I think also that social media has also recently upped, there's online platforms, there are many, but Instagram or Facebook Reels, YouTube Reels, you've got the epilepsy, young epilepsy groups that have all their ads, and there's epilepsy awareness that comes up on people's feeds now, epilepsy action, so that's a little bit more publicised now. So I feel like we're definitely moving in the right way.
And I'd say that I've noticed, on what Demi's saying, I've noticed a lot more youth faces appearing on social media more compared to a few years back. So, for example, like Epilepsy Society, I do see like a lot of youth faces whenever I'm scrolling through. So I think that's a really good thing. We've also recently launched our website, so I think that would make it more accessible for Epilepsy 12. I do remember finding Epilepsy 12 through navigating on the RCPCH website, which is a bit hard to do, but now obviously we've got the website that's a lot more accessible for everyone.
Thank you. I don't know if there's any other questions in the room, but can I ask you something? You're reaching a lot of medical professionals today, and with all your work, how are you reaching education? Is that something you are wanting to do more of? Are you finding you're getting a voice heard in education? Because certainly from a clinical point of view, that sometimes is a very difficult barrier to get through.
Yeah. So, having been on the E12 group and also a few other groups within RCPCH and us, I started my own club at school to raise awareness of different medical conditions, particularly ones that aren't aren't visible, like epilepsy. And I feel like that's definitely raised awareness within my school. And I think as a group, it would be good to try and workshops in schools, do things like that to raise awareness of it, because like we said, and like it's come through on the Menti, schools are one of the, if you want to reach children and young people, you should be aiming to get your information out to schools, and seeing how much seeing the effect of what that small club at school had. It definitely gives me hope to do something bigger within the group across the country to raise awareness so that people are aware that epilepsy exists and it's more than just having a seizure every now and then. That for some people they might have a seizure 1 year and then not for the next 5, but for others they might have it every other day. So it's really, yeah. So that's what I think.
We also, so we don't directly go to schools, but the CYP team do like roadshows and that, and then all the information that's collected is like put into different stuff and helps influence our resources.
Thank you. Hannah, are you going to add something else?
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say, I think adding on to what Aski said, just about sort of information that disabilities aren't necessarily like physical and visible. They can extend to invisible ones too, such as like epilepsy. And once again, you don't need to have regular seizures to necessarily be struggling with epilepsy. Obviously, mental health aspect that we were talking about earlier, or even like struggles with like transition, etc. I think now that I've obviously, in school, I don't think anyone knew much about epilepsy other than seizures. I remember telling my friend for the first time, and I think she looked a bit horrified and asked me, okay, so what do your seizures look like? But actually, most of my seizures are myoclonic. So that's it's harder for my friend to probably identify that, for example. But for example, in school, I used to hear a lot about sort of stigma around even just myoclonic seizures and what people perceive that as. So I think education around sort of invisible disabilities is really important, but also just sort of support. So for example, now that obviously I'm in university, I've reached out to, for example, disabled student allowance, but sometimes it can be quite a lot to explain to them the impact of epilepsy on a regular basis. So just sort of education around that as well.
And I think as medical professionals, what you've described is what we see from our interface with school is that, you know, if there's a child having lots of clinical seizures, they obviously are very keen to know what to do because that's very visible, but it's it's below the tip of the iceberg, the beyond seizures, and an understanding around that I think for us as medical professionals to ensure that schools understand is quite difficult, and working with you guys to try and help with that, I think, would be really useful. Richard?
Richard Brown here. I'm the chair of Open UK. First thing to say is that you guys are amazing. So I'm quite sure that some or all of you will want to be healthcare professionals. So if you'd like to come and do some work experience with me in Cambridge, then you'd be very welcome. Please contact me directly. Look forward to seeing you there.
Ditto Edinburgh.
I got there first, Elsa. The other thing to say is that, of course, you know, when we talk about advocacy, it's not just about influencing this group, but sometimes it's influencing policymakers. And we've previously, you know, banged on NHS England's door to try and drive forward the transformation process, and that has yielded fruit. And what we find is that we all think, you know, with all of our years of experience and publications, and we wheel out Professor Cross, and you know, we come here with all the weight of all of our organisations, and the people they really want to hear from is you guys. And so we ought to cut out the middleman, because now NHS England is ceasing to exist. Then we have to carve out a space for epilepsy. So we need your help with that. So we'd like you to speak directly to the powers that be. So Calvin's suggestion about a day, perhaps we could combine that with some advocacy, and we'd like to hear your voice with those people, please.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask, are there any policymakers in the room? Because if so, shouldn't there be at least one person who is involved in either sharing the policy or making it? They should be attending these kind of meetings too, so they can see what's important to us and the speakers later, as well as on that day.
You are absolutely right. I don't think there's anyone in the room is the policy, but I don't know if there's someone online. Oh, brilliant. We have a policy maker.
Well, not a complete policy maker.
No pressure.
No pressure, but I work for NHS England in the North West, so I'm representing the work that we do in the North West on epilepsy as one of the long-term conditions in the CYP programme, and feed into the national CYP programme where they make the policy.
So what are you going to take back to NHS England so far?
I think from a North West perspective, I'd like to see more North West young people involved in working with Epilepsy12. I'm not sure whether they're aware of that, so I want to raise that profile in our epilepsy meeting.
I don't know, Tony, do you have children and young people from the North West involved in your programme? Not that you're aware, so that's a really useful thing to take back, isn't it? But and I'm sure you will be listening to what these guys are saying and seeing what can be done to achieve opportunities to get over some of the barriers. Okay. Someone else.
Hi, Catherine from Young Epilepsy. It was just a quick comment, really. As you guys know, we have a large youth voice network, and they're involved in some policy influencing work. And it'd be great to do more together. The combined forces, all these young voices, that'd be great.
Okay, Tony's getting your number. Okay, I think we've let you speak for quite a while. We probably need to rest now, but please do continue to contribute today to what is being discussed, because as you've heard very strongly, that your voice is extremely important to us to understand. So thank you, Hannon, Zasky, Demi and Grace. You've been amazing. Thank you so much.